Joining us now from Adelaide, journalist and columnist at the Adelaide Advertiser, Caleb Bond. Welcome, Caleb. Let's get stuck in now. We're going to go to the Oz first, cab off the rank, then we will go to the Herald Sun and then the Age, because this escalation in problems with COVID in Victoria is real and it's upon us, and it's not looking great, particularly off the back of what's been happening in Sydney over the past 10 to 14 days. Victoria ready to lock down. That's the headline on the front page of tomorrow's Australian newspaper. And of course, the headline, the first part says, Victorian health authorities are considering a lockdown of at least 3 days to contain a growing outbreak of COVID-19 sparked by Sydney's Bondi cluster, which has forced 5 million people to comply with stay-at-home orders until at least the end of the month. If we also now go, Caleb, to the front of the Herald Sun, there it is. State on edge. COVID outbreaks hit Melbourne again. Fears over 11 new cases spread across 2 clusters. Fresh restrictions loom. WA shuts border to Victoria, and 2,000 footy fans, Cats partners told to test and isolate. And to finish off that brace of front pages, Victorians brace for new curbs as cases rise. The front of the Age, state government is poised to reimpose coronavirus restrictions today after 11 new cases emerged in Melbourne's north and west from 2 separate outbreaks, and the number of potentially high-risk exposure sites swelled. Caleb, as I said, it's real, it's upon us, and of course Daniel Andrews and particularly these Labor state governments, they're not afraid to go hard and go early.
But I hope that Victoria actually has some sense about this. And would you believe it, I actually am thinking this time around that Daniel Andrews might actually have some sense. He has been one of the few leaders in the last month or so who has shown a bit of leadership, who has shown some pushback to the federal government on their vaccine rollout and various other things, and said, look, you know, as a state, we want to avoid going into lockdown as much as possible. And I hope that he carries through this principle here. You can have a few cases. The reality is that this Delta strain is much more transmissible. Everything shows that it may be twice as transmissible as the original strain of coronavirus, but it is far less dangerous. The hospitalisation rate and the death rate, more importantly, is somewhere around the 0.3% mark as opposed to 2% from the original strain of coronavirus. So it is less deadly, it is less dangerous, but it is more transmissible. So we should expect that more people will come out with coronavirus, will test positive to coronavirus, and in fact we will have people who are vaccinated who will test positive to coronavirus but won't have any symptoms, or at the very least will have very minor symptoms. It won't be a problem to them. And we have to accept, really, I mean, we are at a point now, nearly 18 months since all of this started, that we have to live with the virus. The rest of the world is opening up. You know, we've done exceptionally well in certainly economic sense, but we've done exceptionally well with basically dealing with next to no coronavirus. But we can't continue this 100% elimination strategy without there being economic consequences for doing so. If we want to continue on this zero COVID path, we are going to pay for it economically. We have to make a decision. Do we allow coronavirus to come back, and do we deal with that and the consequences of that, or do we continue on a zero COVID path and pay the economic cost? And I think paying that economic cost ultimately will be harder, will be more difficult, and will be more expensive than accepting that COVID is part of the world. It's not going away. It will never go away. And yes, our vaccine rollout has been slow. Yes, it could have been better. But we cannot continue locking down. I mean, Sydney now is looking at more than a month of lockdown, and the damage that will do to business is untold. And if Victoria, where I am moving in less than 2 weeks, to join the Herald Sun, which is a great newspaper. But if I have to deal with that, and the great people of Victoria have to deal with that again, the consequences will be dire.